Hi you guys, for today's video we are going to be doing a fun transformation. So we are going to be brightening her up a little bit. We're going to do a rooted lived-in bronzy color. We're going to be adding some highlights but also keeping some depth so it's very low maintenance. She's the type of gal that doesn't like to do her color every 4 to 6 weeks. She's more like every couple months. So if you're interested in watching this tutorial, stay right where you're at. All right you guys, so we're going to start mixing up for Mariah. So we are going to be doing 2 different lightener formulations. Her hair has grown quite a bit since she's been taking a break from bleach. So because of that, we're not necessarily wanting to go in and ruin her hair. So we're gonna try to take it slow and gentle. So I'm gonna be doing 7 volume around the hairline because she is pretty light naturally and she usually lifts pretty well. So to protect the hairline, since those pieces are usually a little more fragile, that's what we're gonna be doing. So I am using Schwarzkopf Blonde Me. And when you're using Blonde Me with the developer, keep in mind that it is a little bit thicker. So if you like a runnier consistency, you have to add a little more developer. And when it comes to lightener in general, it really is all about consistency and just doing what works for you. I know some stylists that like thicker lightener, some like thinner lightener. I personally like it on the thinner side, but it's totally a personal preference. I do find that it swells less when it's thinner, so that's kind of why I like it. And I feel like it's a little bit easier to work with. So I am mixing that in with a whisk. And I put as much developer as I think I need, but if it's still a little too thick, then I'll just add a teeny bit more. And I'm using 2 different bowls so that I remember which one is the 7 volume and which one is going to be the 20 volume. So my pink bowl right here is the 7, and I'm gonna be using the small Goldwell brush for the hairline. So this is what I love using for money pieces and detail work around the hairline because it's really delicate and you can get those smaller hairs a little bit easier. So I now know that the pink bowl with the small brush is for that hairline. And then I'm gonna use the same lightener, but this time I'm gonna do a full scoop. And then I'm gonna use 20 volume with it. And 20 volume is what we're gonna use in the interior of the hair because I do want a little more lift around there and the hair's not as fragile as around the face, so we'll be fine with that. But I don't need to use more than 20 volume. I honestly don't use higher than 20 unless I'm trying to lift out darker color. That's when I would maybe bump it up to 30. But since her hair is just kind of like a faded light brunette right now and her natural is like a level 8 and she also just has demi on her hair, we're not needing to lift through a ton of permanent color. So 20 volume is gonna be totally fine, and it's also gonna help keep her hair healthy during this process. And then I'm going to be using this brush. I just got this one at Cosmoprof. I believe it's like Color Track or something, but I really like the bristles on it. It's really smooth and easy to work with. So I'm gonna be using this for the interior of the hair. Okay, so you guys can see that I've started this pattern right here. I wanted to do a few foils and then break it down for you. So I'm using 2 different foil types. I have the Framar foils right here and then Product Club foils right here. The Framar ones are a little bit thicker and these ones are thinner. So I use these ones in the hairline area because I'm trying to stack foils closer together so I can have ultimate brightness around her face. And because these are thinner, I'm able to do them closer together. And then these ones are a little bit thicker and I am doing bigger subsections back here so I can leave a little bit of depth, which is why I'm using these ones. I love both foils, but just for different reasons. So I've started doing this pattern where I do a highlight and then a money piece, a highlight and then a money piece. So I'm gonna show you guys right here exactly how I'm doing that. So I just did a highlight right here and I'm just doing it straight up the head in these sections. And then I'm taking a section from around the hairline, and when I do the hairline, I'm following the shape of the head. So you can see that this one's angled, and I'm actually slicing the whole hairline right now because I do want this to be really bright. And then I'm using my 20 volume. And I always go off of the client's natural part when doing a technique like this. So if they have a set part, that's what you're gonna go off of. If they like to tousle and go back and forth, then going off of the middle or just kind of off center is going to be the best. Okay, this is the very top section. If I was like down here and had a section this size, I probably would just keep this as my subsection. But since it's at the top of the head, I kind of want a little more brightness up here. So I'm gonna divide it in half and do 2 different baby lights. Something I've noticed, and I don't know if this is just like a me thing or if this is common with all hairdressers, but I'll start off really good doing baby lights like this, and then when I get to the back, sometimes I accidentally just take a bigger piece, and I'll always notice that because right here it's a little bit warmer because that piece is thicker. So I always try to be really cautious about keeping that same pattern throughout the entire section. Okay. So this side is completely done with the foil work that we started with. So what I'm gonna do now, so I don't get too into like this section or this section with the foils, to get them out of the way, I'm gonna take my comb, and with the slices in the front, I actually go on an angle with my comb, and I'm just going to angle them back towards me to get it out of the way. If you feel like the foils are in your client's face at all, you can kind of pull them up around here. And then I'm also gonna do the same thing in the back so it doesn't get into my back section. And I'm taking all the foils with my comb and just pulling them up like this. And that also kind of helps tighten your corners and your foils as you go, and then keeps the rest of your areas clean. So if I was wanting to, I could actually just finish this section here and move on, but I also want to do a little more on her. So I'm going to do a little extra step, and this part is totally optional. It kind of just depends on the look your client wants, but I do want some of her ends to pop out a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take small sections like this, and I'll probably only do like 3 in this entire section. Because if you think about it, if you highlight everything, you highlight nothing. You definitely want to keep depth in there. So even just doing 3 foils like this, it's going to make those foils pop against the darker pieces. So I'm going to back comb this. And then since this section is pretty delicate, I'm just going to feather some 20 volume in a slice. And I'm not going all the way up, I'm just kind of feathering it like this, kind of like I would with a balayage. And this is just gonna make this piece of hair pop out brighter on the ends. And then I actually fold this differently. I'm gonna go left, and then right. And when you do this, you wanna make sure it's tight, but you don't wanna push down on the foil because that's gonna push your product all over the place. So you want it to be tight, but loose enough where the product's gonna stay in place. And then I'm gonna do another section right here. And it's really all about visualizing like where this section is going to lay. And obviously I'm wanting it to be brighter around the face. So since this piece of hair is kind of angled towards the face, I'm gonna do this one. And then I'm gonna do one more, which is here on the top section, since I do want the top to be brightest. Okay, so that section is now completely done. We're going to do the same exact thing on this side, and then I'll show you guys how I tackle the back. Okay, you guys, so I am now into the back of the head, and I'm starting here at the nape, and I just have a small section right here, and I am just going to start baby lighting my way up the head, and I'm going to be doing a brick lay pattern. And especially right here where the head kind of curves in, you kind of need some extra help, so I'm going to be using a board. Making sure you pull that tension tight even when using a board. And this is just gonna give me an easier base to highlight on. Honestly, having a board in areas like this is such a lifesaver. This is the B board by Becky Miller. If you look up Becky Miller on Instagram, you will be able to find it. And then I'm taking a subsection about that big, and I'm going to do another baby light right after it. And how I use the board is I take my foil and I just fold a little lip over the top, insert it in, and then I just fold my foils how I normally do. And down here around the shape of the head where it curves in, you can see that since this is kind of like loose, your foils kind of flip out right there. So I like to take the foils and kind of curve them around the neck so that they stay nice and closed. Okay, so I've started this pattern of the back of the head, and I wanted to do a few foils first so you guys could see how it looks, and now I'm gonna explain what I did. So I'm basically doing 2 to 3 foils in the middle, 2 to 3 on the side, 2 to 3 on the other side. So I've done the middle foils right here, and now I'm gonna do the left side. Okay, so I did those 3 foils on the left. Now I'm gonna do the same thing on the right. Okay, so I did the 3 foils on the left, the 3 foils on the right, and now I'm at the same space on either side. So that's where I'm gonna transition up to the middle, and I'll do 3 foils in the middle. When it comes to the highlighting process, I really feel like toning is what brings it all together. You obviously need to place your foils correctly and have technique when doing the highlights, but then being able to go in and shadow or smudge your base, tone the ends perfectly, that's really what's gonna give your client the result they're going for, especially if it's lived-in color or something low maintenance. This client was going a little bit lighter from a bronzy light brown color she had, and she wanted to be more on the blonde side. So giving her a root shadow is really going to give her just like a nice lived-in color that's going to help her transition from the darker color she had to blonde without it looking awkward. So I am using Redken Shades EQ here. I have 7N, 7NA mixed up. I have 1/4 of the 7NA and then 3/4 of the 7N. I just add a little bit of 7NA to ash it out a little bit and counteract any warm tones, but she did lift pretty good, so 7N is really just the dominant tone that I wanted, and I mixed that up equal parts with processing solution. You can see here that I did the majority of her head first, and I left those thicker money sections out because I do want those to be brighter. So I'm going to let these process first before I touch the front. After the back has sat for 10 minutes, I go through and touch the lighter pieces around her face, and you can see here I'm being a little more gentle. I'm not dragging the product as far down because I do want to keep it really bright right here. So in the back, I did kind of like a shadow smudge, and up here I'm doing more of like a shadow tap, just so that it's not as brought down. I'm using the same formula, and then I'm just going through with my brush, and I'm just going to brush it together with all of the stuff in the back, and that way it's going to melt together really nicely, so it's a really good blend. And then after that, I'm going to lean her back, rinse out the root, and start toning. I actually am going to tone the lighter money pieces very first because I do want those to be toned perfectly, and then I can have control over them. So as you can see right here, I'm sectioning those out and toning them. You can also see that the root didn't go down very far on that money piece. It's still really bright, but it did soften it a little bit. So I'm using my toning formulation for the front first, and then I will move my way into the back. And then as I'm toning the back, I'm keeping an eye on the money pieces, and then I'm just going to rinse those out when they're done, and then I'll rinse out the back when it's done as well. I am using Redken Shades EQ. I have mixed up 9NB, 9P. This is one of my favorite formulations if I want an ashy blonde that's also a little more neutral and not too silvery, and that's exactly what we're going for with her. We also are going to add in extensions, and she does want it to have a little bit of dimension, and honestly using the NBs is like one of my favorite things. It's so beautiful. Then I use purple shampoo to reinforce the toners, and then we are done.